I know from my own research that we've had some situations where we've had disastrous results of this. The Challenger disaster was one of those things, and I've talked to a number of people in the healthcare administrations that the food pyramid actually caused a lot of problems. Have you seen any other scenarios where these kinds of misalignments? I don't know how would you characterize it.
Well, I think that the Challenger is obviously an extreme case where there's failures of communication and that lead to this, what should have been a minor problem becoming a major one. In a lot of cases, it's not that it's obviously a mistake. It's that the people don't recognize the implications of the choice they make. Probably the most famous type of example in behavioral economics has been choosing how you present the options for people in simple binary choices. In the prototypic case is something like when you sign up, join a new company, and they ask you, would you like to opt in to the retirement plan? And as a stylized fact, if you present the information that way, and ask people, would you like to opt in? Maybe about half the people will opt in at first. And even after a year, it's only 70%. Many companies realized, based on earlier behavioral economics work, that if you just turn the question around and say, by default, you're in. Now you have to fill out this form to opt out. It's exactly the same choice, and even in some cases, you still fill out the same form, but you set up the default as you're in, but you have to opt out. And then instead of being 70%, you're at 95%. So more people would participate in a retirement plan if you changed the way the information was presented. Now, if you say the other way, it wasn't that the other way was a mistake necessarily, but it just wasn't the most effective way to present information to people. It changed how people engage with their company and how they engage with retirement. And so there's examples like that where I think if you look at the sort of bias that people have naturally, one or another way you present the information has real consequences.
And so that's really the crux of all of this research, is that the way we present information can have a profound effect on whether or not we make a difference or we make an impact at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we call this in behavioral economics is called the framing problem, where the analogy is like to a frame around a museum painting. And you could say, oh, I go to see pick out your favorite painting, if you could see Mona Lisa, and I say, I go to see the Mona Lisa. And of course, you're not looking at the frame. And actually, let me give you, let's say look at a Monet. So something that's sort of on the border of classical art and modern art. And the sort of frame you put around a Monet painting could make it seem like more like 18th century art or more like 20th century art, 21st century art even, based on the type of frame you put around it. And this general idea of framing pervades almost everything that we do in interventions, that we don't necessarily want to change the decision situation. That takes away people's autonomy in some ways. You don't want to take away their options. But if you can change the way the decision is presented or framed to people, that may lead them to think differently. And in the best cases, you set up a frame so it is something that helps people make the choice that they want to make, and basically helps prevent them from making mistakes even according to their own preferences.
So we can help them by guiding them basically to a better decision.
Right, and not a better decision, not necessarily even a better decision that I as some outsider thinks or my company or the government thinks. It may be the better decision that they themselves think. So for example, in shopping, there may be factors that are most important to you and really help you make the best decision for a new car or a mortgage or anything else that's really complicated. And one of the challenges of behavioral economics is to try to find out how to present information so that you help people make the decision that they would want to make, where they'd approach this decision in an optimal, free, fully autonomous way. And so they don't make a decision where they later regret or they realize that they value the wrong things.
So at the same time as it would help, for example, people who are doing marketing, you're also defending the public against those kinds of...
Yeah, that's harder. I mean, the public is not one. There's not one person, and you can't. I don't think one should think of marketing of the government or a nonprofit as being the enemy and the public as being victims. I mean, that's too simplistic of a really complex society. Too simplistic a view of a complex society. I think that in general, as individuals understand their own biases a little bit better, and they develop some pretty simple skills that can help them avoid being biased, then they can make better decisions. And just as an extreme example would be something like helping people avoid scams.
Right.
So within domains, there are things that you can ask people to look for. So anybody who promises you a particular rate of return on investment is a scam. And if you can help in that domain by giving them that rule, it's helpful. But some of them are domain general, and so if we can help give people guidance on when they might be being tricked, then that may help them in a lot of different walks of life.